In team sports, it's often said that there's no substitute for speed. But what happens when you combine both elite-level skill and unrivaled speed? As we'll see in today's video, this combination of skill and speed produced athletes that were so devastating in their respective sports that the prospect of trying to contain them struck fear into the hearts of the opposition. Let's start with the NFL, where speed is so often the difference maker, and very few athletes in NFL history reached a peak level of speed and performance that Chris Johnson demonstrated in his prime. Johnson was drafted to the Tennessee Titans in 2008, after setting a new record in the 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine with a time of 4.24 seconds. At 5'11" and 190 pounds, Johnson was known primarily as a speed running back, but this didn't mean that landing a hit on him would easily put him off his rhythm. What made Johnson's run so dangerous was that he was able to maintain his speed through contact and hit the accelerator again once he broke free from traffic. The difficulty that defensive players had was first getting close enough to tackle Johnson and then having enough force behind them to stop his momentum and bring him to ground. If a defender rushed in too quickly with the hopes of landing a big hit, Johnson had the awareness and the agility to dodge the tackle, which could leave a gaping hole in the defense, giving him a route to the end zone, which he would comfortably exploit with his incredible speed. Johnson rushed for over 1,000 yards in his first 6 seasons in the NFL, and in his second season he rushed for 2,006 yards, making him only the 6th player to rush for over 2,000 yards in a season, while also catching passes for 503 yards, taking his total yards from scrimmage for the season up to 2,509, which is the highest tally for a season in NFL history. Johnson's highlight reel rivals any running backs in NFL history, and his ability to take the ball to the end zone from a run of 80 yards or more meant that defenses were at risk of conceding a touchdown on the very first snap of the drive when Johnson was on the pitch, so they had to focus on smothering his runs as early as they possibly could. Given the level of dominance that Johnson displayed on the football field while he was in his prime, it's easy to make the case for him as having the scariest speed peak in NFL history. Keeping with sports where athletes fly past defenders with the ball in hand, we move to rugby to highlight the Fijian speedster Rupeni Caucaunibuca. Rupeni may have had one of the shorter peaks among rugby legends, but the fact that he's still regarded in such high esteem more than 20 years after he set the rugby world alight at the 2003 World Cup shows just how impressive his performances were during his prime. With a reported 100-meter time of 10.4 seconds, Rupeni is among the fastest rugby players that the game has seen, but numbers by themselves don't tell the full story, as his speed on a rugby pitch was something you needed to see to truly understand. When he got the ball in his hands and took off on a run, it looked like he was set to fast motion, where he was running at 2x speed while his opponents were still on 1x speed. There might not be any better examples of his speed than at the 2003 World Cup, where he received the ball just beyond his own 22-meter line before rounding multiple players, using his speed and sidestepping ability to take it all the way for a try against a star-studded French team. He scored another very similar try just weeks later against Scotland, where again he received the ball around his own 22-meter line and took the ball all the way for a try, beating several attempted tacklers in the process. What was most remarkable about Rupeni's speed peak is that he wasn't even in an exceptionally lean state during this time, and may have even been carrying some extra fat, as he weighed in the region of 220 pounds at 5'11". His stocky frame wasn't a hindrance to his athleticism, however, and it was this explosive build that allowed for a rapid change of direction that made his sidestep so devastating. With the velocity that he was traveling when running with the ball, trying to tackle him was a nightmare for defenders, which allowed him to brush off many would-be tacklers when they tried to put a hand on him. He maintained a positive tries to appearances ratio with Fiji and also with the Auckland Blues, scoring 15 tries in 14 games from 2002 to 2004, which caused people to regard him as one of the greatest wingers the Super Rugby competition has ever seen, despite only playing a small volume of games. Rupeni would have his share of highlight-worthy moments after moving to the French league, But as his career progressed, he transitioned from being a pure speedster to a more bruising ball carrier as his weight would rise up to 245 pounds, which left him visually out of shape, but he could still produce moments of magic on the rugby field. Rupeni's speed peak in the 03 and 04 seasons gave us some of the most freakish solo tries we've seen in rugby, which is why he must hold the label of the greatest speed peak in rugby. Next, we move to football, where ultra-fast attacking players can be a nightmare for opposition defenders, and no player encapsulated this quite like Thierry Henry. Many of the greatest defenders who played in the same era as Henry have spoken about how he was the single attacker they were most fearful of, as he had lightning pace to go along with his unmatched footballing ability, which led to several long and humiliating days at the office for opposition defenders. Standing at 6'2", the athletic French forward had been converted from a winger to a striker. But it was this versatility in attack that meant Henry could hurt his opponents from any position on the pitch. Whether he picked the ball up on the wing and out-sprinted his marker, ran off the shoulder of the last defender to latch onto a through ball, or picked the ball up in his own half and dribbled through multiple players while making it look effortless, Henry simply couldn't be contained when he was on his game. What characterized Henry's playstyle was just how easy he made everything look. With his long strides, Henry glided past his opponents without looking like he was trying all that hard, while his opponents struggled to keep pace with him. Henry had an elegance while running with the ball that made it seem like the ball was under complete control at all times, even when he chose to move up the gears, and the sudden change of pace that he could unleash on defenders left them constantly mindful that he could blow by them at any moment. This ability to control the ball was what set him apart from other players who had elite pace, but couldn't express it to the same degree when running with the ball, while the players who were on par with Henry in terms of ball control couldn't match him when it came to sheer speed. What made Henry so hard to defend against wasn't just that he could burn his opponents for pace, but also that he could fall deep into the playmaker role and pull the strings where he looked completely composed on the ball. Because of the respect that defenders paid to Henry, they usually stood a couple of yards off him when he picked up the ball so that they had time to react if he suddenly took off. This space that he was afforded actually allowed him more time to pick out a chance-creating pass, thus leaving defenders in a position where they had to pick their poison because no matter how they decided to mark him, he had a myriad of ways to hurt the opposition. There was perhaps no better proof of this than when he achieved the milestone of 20 goals and assists within a Premier League season, finishing the 02-03 season with 24 goals and 20 assists, with Lionel Messi being only the second player to achieve this feat across Europe's top 5 leagues. Henry scored a number of iconic goals throughout his career, with his goal against Real Madrid in the Champions League in 2006 being one of the best goals that showed his combination of speed, dribbling and finishing. It was his performances during his athletic prime from 1999 to 2007 that earned him the label of the best Premier League player ever, with NBA courts being 94 feet long, making them less than a third of the length of an NFL field. The advantage that a fast player can have on a basketball court compared to in field sports might be expected to be unsubstantial, given the lack of opportunity to expose the opposition's defense by simply beating them in a foot race. However, when Russell Westbrook was on the court, he called this theory into question, as he played the game at a pace where the slightest bit of open space on a court looked like a gaping valley for him to drive through. In situations where teams would usually have some time to establish their defensive position, Westbrook had already exploited the space, accelerating at a remarkable rate while the defenders barely had time to react. Where Westbrook had the greatest opportunity to utilize his full speed potential was on the fast break where the defense was scrambling to get back. But even on basic inbound plays, Westbrook had a way of breezing past defenders with his speed that shouldn't have been possible against NBA-caliber players. Westbrook was recorded to have traveled from one baseline to the other with the ball in a time of just 3.36 seconds, finishing off the play with a dunk. Navigating around the opposition players at such pace while maintaining control of the ball showed an immense combination of skill and athleticism, and while he was one of the greatest athletes in the league, what would come to define him was his tenacity and dedication to playing hard, every time he took to the floor. Standing at 6'3" and 200 pounds with a lean and muscular build, Westbrook was a devastating dunk threat, and the speed he approached the rim at only served to make his dunks more violent and unstoppable. After his OKC Thunder teammate Kevin Durant left to join the Golden State Warriors, who they had just been eliminated by the previous year, Westbrook put the team on his back for the 2016-17 season, playing like a man possessed, which led to him averaging a triple-double for the season and winning the league MVP award in the process. When Westbrook played hard, he played fast, and this inability to separate his determination to win from his physical effort on the court meant he only seemed to have one gear when the ball was in his hands, as well as one objective: drive straight to the basket regardless of how many people tried to get in his way. The four athletes we highlighted today may have expressed their speed in different ways in their respective sports, but something they all held in common was how they reached the highest levels of performance that their sports have seen, thanks to their game-changing speed coupled with their extremely high skill levels. When unteachable talent and attacking flair meets a sheer determination to dominate the opposition, it can give rise to the greatest speed peaks witnessed in the world of team sports.